Good evening, and thank you for welcoming our team, BSWPC, to come present to you on our analysis of the enlarged Cutter Dam for the Cutter River Reservoir. My name is Nicole, and in front of you, you have Alika and Asser. To get us started, I wanted to touch on a brief overview of what we will be discussing today. First, we'll go over the project tasks assigned that we were, and then we'll really dig into the details about what we've been tasked and how we came with our conclusion, which includes telling you our assumptions, going through the cost models, and some of the technical drawings we've included and used, then looking at our contingencies, construction, flood, and then the sensitivity analysis we performed. In the end, we'll give you our conclusion and welcome you to any questions. I do want to say if you have any questions as we go through this, to please say them and ask them as we have them. Getting us started, a brief description as we understand it is, you all looked at 3 different water security options for the Cutter River Reservoir. You decided on an 80-meter roller compacted concrete dam and ancillary facilities for this project. We then took the reports you gave us and dug into them, really divulged ourselves into them, and did an analysis of them. Then we did our own, not looking at the drawings, did our own analysis of quantities that we would take for our self-perform work. We did the cost analysis there, and then we put a number to it, and then started looking at the contingencies. We also did some research on some price evaluation for escalation and inflation for labor and material, and then we looked at some other areas of what things to consider for this project. So, evolution of the estimate. We understand in 2005, an estimate was performed by CIE, giving you $120 million for that estimate for this project, plus 30% contingency. That then increased to a 2007 estimate of $145 million, but keeping the same 30% contingency, and this was done by ACTEW. In 2009, an estimate was done and said to be $363 million, but with only a 9% contingency. We have done our own estimate, and we will show you what that will be now to show you how it compares to 3 different numbers. To get us started, I want to show you our assumptions. As you can see, they're listed here. I'm not going to take the time to outline them. They are listed in our report for you as well. Some things just to highlight are, some assumptions we included were, we were assuming borrowed material was from a quarry that was located on site for what we needed. We also looked at the fine material was crushed on site. Lastly, the RCC, we assumed a Class C fly ash to be included and aggregate sizes of less than 4.75 millimeters in that mixture for it. Some more assumptions are structural concrete here listed with the culverts and the OEs and our aeration factors, and then the structural concrete which was provided as well. Inclusions, we just want to let you know, these are our 10 self-performed items that were included in our estimate. And they comprise more than 60% of the direct cost, which is a big amount, but for this type of project you would expect that. The remaining items we used the 2009 to 2010 bid tab that was provided and used the average unit price cost for those quantities. Then just some general exclusions are listed here. As you can see, the ownership costs we've kept separate. They're still included in our total estimate number, but not in our direct work costs that we provide as well as some general contracting things and landscaping, just so you're aware of. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Asser to start discussing our cost estimate. Thank you, Asser. And now to conclude, one thing we really want to stress is from day one you approach a project and take it from its whole. That includes a site investigation, making sure you get to that site. You look at everything. You look at the surrounding areas. You look at transportation, means and methods. That is very important to get everyone on board. Another thing is making sure you're setting up for success. If you change things in your estimate from day 1 to 3 years later, Make sure if you're ever reconciling, trying to figure out why the estimate differed in one year from another, that you're pinpointing and showing those items in detail. And if there's something not included in one that's included in another, that you're plugging in a number there to show you what it would have been if it was included or what it was if it was excluded. It's always good to make sure you're keeping things apples to apples, because otherwise you're really not comparing something to itself. That goes with being on the same page and tracking. Then we also want to analyze the market, old and new, looking at past year's costs, especially for escalation and inflation, but also looking ahead. Where are we predicted to go? Lots of magazines do those predictions for you that you can look up. Then making sure in your estimate details you provide clear assumptions and clarifications is key, because otherwise it's harder to find out what was actually there and what was actually said. Very important, and we feel we provided some assumptions and clarifications to you all as well. And then again, making sure your estimate report is complete, that the contract type is correct for the project. Making sure that as a GMP or a lump sum or a CM agent or a CM at risk, that those contract types are set up and the costs associated with them correctly. For this one being a majority of the work we self-perform, we feel it was set up pretty well. Schedule you also want to look at. That could come into big play as far as general conditions, fees, design fees, owner costs, owner fees, especially if you feel like you're crunching on the schedule to meet a deadline. If you really think it's not feasible, make sure you bring that up. Otherwise, make sure you're talking with the subcontractors about working 2 shifts or overtime or whatever it may be, so that's forecasted and reflected in your estimates. So to conclude, you can see our final estimate tabulation. As Asser and Alika have shown, we have 101% contingency, with 26% of that contingency being solely due to material and labor escalation. Then we have 65% for unknowns, unestimated items, scope increases, cost variations, that different area there. And then a 10% flood contingency due to the location of this project and the past history and the events occurring in the world today. That brings our direct cost, subtotal with overhead, to $119 million. Add the ownership cost to $183 million. With the contingencies, we rounded out to $387.8 million. So in conclusion, we found that higher contingencies were most likely needed for this type of project, especially when it came to contingencies that weren't escalation and a flood contingency. Lastly, we've showed you our analysis of 101% for contingency amount and the total projected estimate at $387 million. At this time, that concludes our presentation. Alika, Asser, and I thank you for welcoming us and listening to us today, and we will entertain any additional questions that were not asked or answered beforehand. Thank you.